What's ZEN about BOJE's nub-nose mesquite pen? Let's go ahead and make one. We'll put the mandrel in a piece of mesquite. You see the pointy spines here, the needles, they will poke you. Put the mandrel in. We've already drilled the hole down the center. You see this mesquite is a little bit crooked, but we managed to get a hole down the center of it, and now we're going to strip it off. Now, this is about the philosophy of Zen Buddhism. What we're trying to do is get into kind of the philosophy of wood pen making and kind of the subtleties of Zen. If you've ever read the Book of Tea by Okaro Kakuzo, 1906, you can easily get a copy of that book. And what occurred to me is there's kind of a subtlety in pen making as we assemble the tools, and in this case the file, and we're about to start up the lathe. And there we go. And we're going to apply pressure to it. Now, it's kind of a very meditative event when you're doing this. It's a meditative moment. And you don't rush it because you'll screw up the wood. Now, I've gone into nature and collected this wood. I've sized it. I've selected the one for the day. I have an idea of who I want to give this pen to in a National Storytelling Conference. We're going to have in Nashville, Tennessee in December. You're all welcome. And I'm writing about a nub pen. A nub means I'm going to put a kind of a ball end on it because I can hold on to it better as a left-handed person. Maybe you prefer a straight or a tapered end. I prefer a little nub that it allows me, my fingers, to hold on to it. So turning the pen is a time of meditation. There's a preparation of my shop, getting everything in order, getting the tools ready to hand, as Martin Heidegger, the philosopher, talks about it. But I'm not engaged in Western thinking of materialism and the substance of the material, etc. It's more of a spiritual meditation where I'm actually escaping the Western material world and getting in touch with the subtleties of pen making itself. If you've ever read Persig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, or any of the Zen and skiing, etc., you see there's a kind of an aesthetic minimalism that's involved here. I'm getting in touch with the aesthetics of pens, the ceremony of making a pen. This is my ceremony with my file, and when I get to the sandpapers, and there's a certain amount of meditative simplicity here, getting it down to how I work with the wood, checking it. You can see I'm making the nub here on the right side. You see the little ball is starting to form, and the entry for the refill on the left side where the mandrel is thickest. And I kind of appreciate this notion of penism, kind of the school of pen ceremony, the presence of kind of the processes I engage in. You know, I've made about 30 of these pens, and I want to make over 100. And as I make each one, I'm limiting myself to just making one a day, spending about 3 hours finding the branch I want to use, cutting it to size, drilling the branch, using the rasp file. This is a file they use in trimming horseshoes, but a farrier that uses it. But I find it's really good for taking the bulk off before I want to switch to a smaller file for the end work. It's a simple, everyday material, mesquite branches from my yard. We trim the mesquite trees because they grow too big on the paths, and they can poke your eye out. So, and I want to make this mesquite pen a little wild. So when we get to making the tip, I'm going to leave some of the thorns on the tip that goes into the end of the pen, and then we'll make a place to store the pen on your desk, if this ends up being your pen. I don't sell the pens. It's more of a gift-giving ceremony. And I'm very interested in kind of just slowing my life down, not having a double focus or triple focus or trying to double task, but just focusing in total mindfulness and awareness of what I am doing, as Yoda says in the movie Star Wars. Pay attention to what you're doing. Have your mind in awareness. And this is also a unified concept of art and life. So for me, this is a very artistic aesthetic that I'm perfecting. I'm not using a kit pen. You've seen this in the other videos. My dad did kit pens, and hey, more power to him. He made some really good ones. And you too, if you're using a kit pen. But I want a pen that's made out of a 6-7 inch long mesquite branch, hole down the center. I'm there, I'm tipping the ball, I'm using a smaller file now, getting down to it. I'm going to take a little bit more bulk off because mesquite is a kind of a hardwood, and I'm able to make a skinnier shaft on it, a lighter weight pen. I'm not going to make it too skinny because I found for me, if the pen is too skinny, it kind of slips around in my hand, and I'm not able to control the other part of pen making, which is to use the pen in penmanship or pen personage, pen personship, pen womanship, however you want to call that in our trans world. So if you're making a pen and you have in mind kind of how this pen is going to be used in forming letters and making the precise letter. And this is Taoism from Japanese notions. I remember my first Japanese tea ceremony that I attended when I was a professor at Loyola Marymount University. Took a group of MBA students to Tokyo, and then took a train up to Kyoto, and we watched not a pen ceremony, but a tea ceremony. And it was amazing, the assembling of the artifacts together, getting the fire started, getting the water boiling, taking the tea out, and a special, just the movement, everything is choreographed in the movement of the tea ceremony. And I want my things to be choreographed too. I'm using a heavier weight sandpaper now, getting it filed down or sanded down to the right size. And I want to make sure there's no grooves in the shaft of the pen. And I just want to tune in what the pen feels like as it's turning, 3,500 RPMs on the lathe. But at this point, the pen is very smooth, and you can touch it. I'm checking it out here. I'm going to take it out, and what I want to do now is shape the ball into the pen, what I call the nub of the pen. So we'll take it over here to this special sander I bought from somebody up in Truth or Consequences that was selling the lathe and this item, and they were both brand new. I hadn't even used these items. Maybe used the sandpaper once or twice here, but it's a brand new machine. And I like the way it rotates and moves up and down. I have good precision, and I'm making the nub smaller. I don't want it too big a nub. I just want my pointing finger and my thumb to slide down and not slide past it and get all touching the point of the refill and getting ink on my fingers. So that's what I'm doing here. I hope you enjoying just the meditative process. as much as I am. And I'm going to take it back on the lathe in a second here. And, this sanding process will shape it, but it won't get it smooth as I want the nub to be smooth and round. And I don't want to feel grooves with my fingers or rough spots. I don't want that to distract from me as I'm penning the letters or whoever I gift this pen to. I'll use it a while and make sure the end fits in tight and everything is going. I'm going to go back to the lathe and bring it down to a smaller shape on the shaft and kind of smooth out what we just ground down on that sanding machine. Kind of feeling my way. You got to kind of wind up the end of the lathe, tighten it up so it doesn't slip out. I've had it slip out before. You got to pay attention to what you're doing. I'm using here the smaller file, but I still want to take some more off of the end here and just shape it. Sorry getting my hair in the way. Got long hair. I like to embarrass my two sons because they're mostly bald. I don't know somehow I'm at age 75 and wound up with long hair. And, in the Army, I was in Vietnam, you had to have your hair cut short and all that. And, hey, I'm not in the Army now. Getting VA benefits for the cancer that I kicked. And thank you, VA, for the benefits, but no thank you for the Agent Orange. But let me concentrate here on what I'm doing and meditate just on being at oneness with the wood itself, the file, the turning lathe, the hand motions. There you see kind of indent the file a little bit to get that edge right on the nub and bring it down. Now I'm smoothing that part out. I'm using the bigger file, but I want to bring the shaft down a little bit narrower, not too narrow, just the right amount. I'm not going to measure it with a mechanical caliber instrument or something. I want to feel it, the weight of it and the size of it and the aesthetic. It's not something where I'm measuring things, roughly a measurement of length and that sort of thing. And I know what size drill bits I'm using. And I know to use the rougher sandpaper and then use finer and finer grains. I'll end up with a number 600 and finally a polishing cloth. And you'll see in a second here when I get to that I lubricate it with kind of a silicone oil. And that's something that I found that makes it shine. It doesn't coat it too much, and you still get that natural wood feel. I think I'm lucky I don't catch my hair in the lathe here, but actually it's further away than it looks on the camera. And just feel it. See how it is. Turn it around. Yeah, you see the end there's got, you could see where the bark was still attached. Again, this piece of mesquite was kind of crooked, and I was able to pull out, kind of whittling it down, filing it down, sanding it down to get closer to it. It's actually spinning at 3,500 RPM. You can't quite tell. It looks like it's still, but it's spinning. And I got the end there that I work on the nub, kind of the smooth part of the lathe, where the other end is, you got some jagged parts sticking out. You don't want to put your hands over there too much. But the mandrel is in that part, so I'm protected. Now I'm going to take number 50 sandpaper and grind that down. It's still pretty rough, but I want to make sure I don't have any groove rings from the file itself. And I like the feel of this as I'm going in. Sometimes I'll hold another piece of sandpaper over the paper I'm using because it gets hot sometimes. But I'm taking my time, and as it heats up, I'm switching around. Now we're going to go to a little bit more refined sandpaper here and bring that down. And we're getting closer and closer to where I want it. This is about a 250, 300 that I'm using now. And I'll go to a 4 and then a 600. And, just taking my time. And now is a 120. I need to take off a little bit more. This is still pretty coarse sandpaper. But again, I want to make sure. Sometimes I quit too early and I've left some marks there where it's sort of transitions to the nub or transitions to the kind of the beveled end of the pen where the ballpoint goes into it. And those are areas that I've learned over time and the number of that I'm doing. You got to make those transitions really smooth. And let's see what I'm going to grab here now. I think I might be going for, the 600. That's a 600 grit. It's pretty fine. You can get 1,000 grit. I don't have any of those, but this seems to do the job at 600 for the application that I'm doing. I want to go ahead and get those 1,000 grits and just to make it as smooth and fun to hold on to as I possibly can. So these are it's a kind of a Zen experience of being in the here and now, being in touch with the material, being in the space that I'm in of my shop, clearing the space for the work that I'm doing. Now I took that liquid wrench. I know professional pen makers don't use liquid wrench, but I find it works really well. And I actually got that really high-priced oil, Amsoil oil, I think it's called Amsoil, for my my pickup truck and my car. I'm going to use some of that in the future. I got a little bit of it left. And I want to use some of that really cool oil. But here the liquid wrench is silicone and it does the job. And now I'm going to take and do the finishing touch on this kind of polishing cloth that I have. And just moving it back and forth, because I don't want to create any ridges or notches in it or anything. Just keep it moving. Again, careful with the transitions. And it feels pretty smooth. So checking the transitions, making sure. And as my dad always said, he was a pen maker, used kit pens. I use kitless pens. But he always says, David, quit while you're ahead. Don't push it past the point where you're going to break it. And it's a pretty good product now. And so what am I doing over here? Oh, my goodness. Oh, I'm just going to shape the end of it so that if somebody wants to stand it on its end, it's more or less flat. And that's without the end that kind of jams the cap of the ballpoint into the shaft here. Now it stands up all right. So now I'm just trimming the edge to make sure that's smooth. And I'm able to spin it pretty evenly and fast, so I don't have to go back to the lathe for this part of it. But it makes sure that I'm not going to have any burrs on the end and splinters that might crack the end. So it's looking pretty good here. We're going to go over and a couple of steps I got. I want to fit the refill in there and then measure to see how much I've got. Sometimes measurement is important. How long of an end cap I want to make. I'm going to make that out of mesquite. You can make it out of a different kind of wood, a softer wood, and it'll be easier. I use these Gesso gel refills. They don't smudge. Their price is good. You can get the paper wet and run your finger across it. It won't smear. Really good. A lot of my artist friends are using these pens I make in their artwork, and people who are writers are using these pens I make because there's a different feel to the pen itself as you're using it. I want to show you, the refill fits okay, and we need to have an end cap, and that's the part I want to make now is the end cap. I'm not sure why we're watching so much TV, but my dad always said that he wanted to keep a TV going in his shop, even if the sound was off, because it was like there was no liveness in the shop. He didn't like I think he liked the ghost in the machine sort of notion. And there's a spiritual aspect to pen making. Now here I'm going to the wheel grinders. The one on the left really tears stuff out. The one on the right is finder. And the grinder I got from a drum maker who made drums. So the one, it has a nice feel to this. I'm going to notch out end of a piece of mesquite that, as I said before, it's going to have a couple of thorns on it. It's kind of a novelty piece, these thorns sticking out. You might prefer to knock them off if I award this pen to you, but you might like to just have the novelty of the mesquite pens. I left one shorter and one very long. It's about 2.5 inches or so. And then you can find longer ones. Yeah, I don't know if you know, but mesquite trees, they form rings, a whole group of them. And those rings of mesquite can be up to 5,000 years old. Here in the desert, they're not that old. You might find some that are 100 years old, but nothing longer than that. But there are parts of the world where the mesquite can be 5,000 years old. So I like to make a mesquite end here to the pen. The wood is hard and it takes a lot to grind it out. And I got to be careful not to leave it too thick, or when I try to screw it into the end of the shaft of the pen I made that I spent an hour on, it's going to split the end. If I make it too narrow, this cap that goes into the hole I made for the mandrel and where the refill goes, then it's not going to hold the refill in solid, and you're not going to like that. You're going to have to gerrymander it or something. I want it to just fit snug, but not too snug where it breaks the pen. And I wanted to just hold that refill in there snugly and make it easy for whoever I give this pen to. I'm going to use it myself for a while and just play with it. So this takes a while, and you might try to rush through this process, and I rushed through it yesterday, and you know what? I had too much material on it, and when I screwed it into the pen, it split the end of the pen, and I spoiled the pen. I had to glue it back, and now it's like I see the imperfection. But some people like a little imperfection, and they like the repair of the imperfection, and that's kind of a meditative thing too. And there's a book by Heidegger, and it talks about kind of another Japanese concept where if you repair something, it actually has a different energy to it than if you just got something and made it and it's kind of perfect. But if you repair it, they used to, like bowls, they would put a gold leading into it, a bowl that had broken apart, and then that bowl that was leaded in with gold to repair the chipped out pieces, or the broken out pieces, and it's actually more valuable that way. And I kind of think of that too. If I make a mistake, I'm just going to repair it and make it the best pen I can, and then I'll tell the user, hey, this one split a little bit on the end, or in the nub. Like yesterday, I dropped a pin, and the nub kind of split a little bit. It didn't break apart, but I'm going to put a little bit of glue. Now, I use Gorilla Glue to cover the end of the pin. I like the Gorilla Glue. It dries reasonably fast. It leaves a nice coat. But I don't coat the whole pin, just the damaged part. But you can see I'm still working on getting this the right diameter, and but it takes a while. I'm spending almost as much time on the end cap as I did on the pin shaft itself, and that's because it's a small piece. You might think it's inconsequential, but there's a certain joy in making it right and spending time with it and knowing that it's going to do the job and not destroy the artwork. And I think the end cap is its own kind of artwork. I like it, you can see the grain at the end of the end cap. I like how it feels, and I like the spine, the big pinchy spines sticking out. That's how the mesquites protect themselves. So I'm just making it a little bit narrower. That's the part that's going to plug into the longer shaft of the pin, So, and it turns out that the longer spine gives me something to hold on to as I turn this around and around. And I might leave it longer, like almost half an inch or so, or I might just make it a little bit narrow. And I'm almost got it to where the end is going into the pin itself. Now I have to be very careful not to underdo it or overdo it. It's just the right amount. I suppose if I had a manufacturing shop, I would automate this process, but that would take the whole ZEN experience out of it. And the Western thinking wants to just manufacture everything. And but here's the thing: I'm finding joy and pleasure in simplicity and minimalism, and taking a nature world item and putting it into the work world of art, and then into the public world. See yesterday's tape on that if you missed it. There's three worlds, and then there's the spiritual world here. So here we go. I think I got it. So we're going to test it out. Let me move my drink over and see how she goes. Okay. So I'm going to just get a little bit of threads on the end of this piece part that goes into the shaft, and that just makes it adhere a little better when you're twisting it in. And I used to try to make bigger threads and even thread it inside the pin shaft, but that would tend to split the shaft. Now it snugs in pretty good. Not too tight, not too loose. A little bit more tension, and we've got it. We've got a refill that holds in there, and it's kind of a novelty piece with the needles of the mesquite sticking out. Now I'm going to just cut about a 2.5 inch piece of wood. I'm going to cut the bottom first so that it'll be sitting flat on somebody's desk or work table. And my dad was always scared of the bandsaws and told me, just be careful. And I worked at a metal shop for a while before going into the military, got drafted, Vietnam, and I worked with a big bandsaw. That sucker, big teeth, tear through any size metal. Here I'm just for wood. But you still got to be careful of these bandsaws. So I got a piece of wood. I'm going to swap out this drill bit. I could use this drill bit and then use the other one, but I think I'm just going to use the one wood drill bit, about a 5/8, to make the holder for the pen. And I'm not going to use mesquite here because I just didn't have any mesquite in my shop that was the right size to make the pen holder. So this is probably desert willow. And it's a nice hardwood itself, a little bit easier to work with than the mesquite, but still a nice hardwood. And the desert willow has wonderful grain. I think even a better grain structure when you're done than to look at than the mesquite. Now, you'll find grains in the to look at in the finished mesquite, and you'll find little points where the particular spines were coming out, the needle points on the mesquite. And sometimes you will have a piece of older mesquite, and I think it'll have a little bit more grainy texture in the final product. But here you see how this piece of wood that I'm making the base for the pen, you see how it has that darker center to it. Well, then you get down to that part of the center, it's going to have these brown streaks when you're using the desert willow wood. But today we're doing the best we can with mesquite. It's a harder wood. It's going to feel really good. And I made the pen shaft the size that I like. I could have made it a little thinner, but there we go. I think I got it. I might put a little bit of polish on that in here, but it's kind of okay. Here you see the end cap with the needle on it from the mesquite. You see the base here. See it fits in there real nice. Won't tip over on the desk. And that's about it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the art of Zen and pen making. So meditate while you